I'm joined live from New York by Katrina vanden Heuvel, Editor-in-Chief at The Nation. Katrina, thanks for your time. You've been reporting on Russian issues for the last 30 years. Talk me through this latest flashpoint. How serious is it?
It's very serious. I think the most immediate task is to diffuse the crisis. And I think there are real possibilities. We're waiting for the Americans, to respond to the Russians. And I think there are real possibilities. No one is going to send American men and women to fight in Ukraine. There is a dishonest conversation in this country because NATO wouldn't accept Ukraine at this moment, which is at the heart of the crisis because of its territorial integrity and other issues. So I think it's become a proxy war, geopolitical war with the United States and Russia. But I do think there are negotiations such as Minsk, Normandy from 2015 that can be returned to with France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine, and find a way to demilitarize the situation and give independence, guaranteed independence to Ukraine, autonomy to the Donbas region, and find a way forward. But that's going to take a diminution of hotheads, if I might say so, the ascendant hawks in both countries, Russia and the United States.
Can you explain for us, watching from afar, the difference between, say, Ukraine, which we're facing now, and previous incursions or border disputes from Russia, like Crimea, for example?
Well, what you have is really the history of NATO expansion, beginning in 1990, when in the wake of German reunification, Gorbachev, then the Soviet leader, was promised by George H.W. Bush and James Baker, the Secretary of State, that NATO would not expand 1 inch eastward. It is now on the border of Russia. Crimea is a very different situation. Crimea was given by the Soviet leader Khrushchev to Ukraine, and it was in the context of the Maidan, the coup in Ukraine, that Russia seized Crimea, which is a strategic Sevastopol, the fleet base. Donbas is a poor part of Ukraine. It has been at war now for 4 or 5 years. 15,000 or more in Ukraine, primarily Donbas, have been killed, civilians. And I think the civil war is depleting everyone. So if there's a way forward, I think this is the moment, though it seems odd, like darkness, the darkness before light, but there is a possible incentive to negotiate more now, possibly, than even 3 or 4 years ago. But this is very different than Ukraine. And I know it's being conflated. The international borders, yes, there was violation, as there has been in Kosovo and there was in Iraq. But it's a different situation. This is a civil war that demands a political and diplomatic resolution, which is available.
We are obviously very focused in this region on China. How much does Moscow coordinate and cooperate with Beijing?
So this is going to push Russia further into the arms of the Chinese if it proceeds without a resolution with the West, with the European alliance. You know, interestingly, Ukraine could be a part of both East and West, part of Russia, part of EU, part of the European alliance. Putin and Xi are meeting next week, I believe, at the Olympics. What strikes people in this country is that there was a thought that there would be a heavy pivot to Asia, to China, to Taiwan, to dealing with those issues. But instead, the United States has gotten kind of caught up in this, to the point where President Biden spoke honestly at his press conference last week when he said, if it's a small incursion, I mean, it should be led with if it's a diplomatic resolution, but a small incursion, let all these people, to call him an appeaser if he didn't bring troops to bear. He was talking about punitive sanctions. But, you know, the sanctions regime has already been imposed on Russia to a large extent. Any additional sanctions are going to bring blowback to the Europeans and possibly to China. So I think there's a folly in the way the United States foreign policy is operating to bring Russia and China together in this instance.